The Whydah is the only substantiated pirate shipwreck discovered in the world. Its remains and artifacts scattered across the ocean floor off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Now on display, traveling across the country. We learn about the Whydah and the life of its pirate crew on Newsmakers. A pirate's life is revealed in the traveling exhibition Real Pirates. The Grand Rapids Public Museum is displaying the plundered treasures recovered from the pirate ship Whydah. It's an opportunity to explore the economic, political, and social circumstances of the early 18th century Caribbean. Joining us is exhibition expert Jason Simmons and conservator and diver Chris McCourt. How are you?
Great. How are you?
We were sitting here earlier and saying, how cool is it? We're talking about pirates.
Yeah.
What is the allure of pirates?
I think every young kid has either read, some of the old pirate stories or have seen it on television, and I think it's all about sort of, the freedom to roam the seas and to do as you like, and that sort of romantic aspect of it. And for somebody like me, I was hooked at a young age growing up on Cape Cod, and then now it's what I do for a living. So I think different circumstances for different people, but I think there's a little bit of everything for different types of people when it comes to pirates.
Jason, for you?
Hollywood has made it a pop culture phenomenon. From Johnny Depp to Treasure Island, everyone loves pirates.
Yeah, there are children's programs.
Mm-hmm.
I think little girls enjoy the pirate.
Everyone
I don't know
does.
if it's what they wear. Yeah. Is it the skull and crossbones?
It's the adventure. It's the idea of becoming instantly wealthy, finding buried treasure. It's the swashbuckling, sword fighting. As a child, I loved sword fighting. I probably still would like it. I love the idea of getting rich with treasure. Yes. All
right. I was going to save this for the end, but let's just do it right
sure.
now. Arr! Did they say arr?
No. I don't think so. It was never written down anyway.
I don't think it sounds scary enough. Pirates tried to be scary and intimidating, and it probably wasn't.
Well, the reality of pirates, which is what the museum is doing, what our exhibit is doing, is to sort of tell the real story of what pirates were really like. And one of the things that I like telling people is that most of these guys were young, 15 into their early 20s, maybe had a penchant for violence, alcohol. And adventure, really. And it was in many ways, it was their only opportunity to gain wealth or to become wealthy, even if it's just for a short period of time, because of their social status.
But there was some law enforcement at the time as well. I mean, they still had to deal with...
It's a big ocean. They're hard to find, these guys.
Yeah, that's the truth. And there was no Coast Guard back then, for the most part. It was just, kings and queens sending out ships to try to track down these pirates that were interrupting in their trade and trying to take them out. But the pirate captains and the crews were very, very smart. They were very well armed, for the most part, and they had their hiding places in the Caribbean as well as in the Indian Ocean. So places like the Bahamas and in Jamaica, Port Royal, were two big places that they would hide out and spend their loot or lose it in gambling.
So what was the system? Was there a pirate class? Was there a pirate mob? There was
a pirate's code, and it had everything from a healthcare program to
workers' comp.
Workers' comp, yeah. They really did.
Limes and oranges for the scurvy?
No. If you were in battle and you lost an arm, you would get, say, 20 pieces of 8. Or if you lost a leg, you would get 50 pieces of 8. If you lost an eye, you would get 5 pieces of 8. Just sort of, help you along there. And then for the most part, they would just sort of slough off after they were unable to fight.
But they voted on their captains. They elected their own captains. They were floating democracies.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's what was really worrying the kings and queens back in Europe, is that these guys, whether they were from Africa or from the Americas or from England, on the pirate ship, they were all voting. They were voting their captains in, voting their captains out. They would vote, yes, we want to attack this ship. No, we don't want to attack this ship. So that voting, that floating democracy that Jason just mentioned, is what was really, besides interrupting the trade between England and India, or England and the Americas and the Spanish, it was the idea that these guys were voting and they were all equal. The kings and queens weren't voted in or out back then. They were born into their position.
So, and they got equal pay.
And they were all equal. Like 1/3 of the Whydah crew were freed slaves. back in 1717, and they had an equal vote and an equal share of the loot. So that's something that was really frightening for the aristocrats back in Europe.
So there was this built-in motivation then for people. If you're a slave too, you're an equal. You're motivated.
Well, absolutely. What other options did you have? You could either be a slave, work a plantation, or you could go pirate and earn a ton of money and be free. So it's kind of an irony that slavery was legal at the time and piracy was outlawed.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it just reminds me, one of my favorite sayings that a real pirate captain back in the day, the golden age of piracy, his motto was "a short life but a merry one." And I think that says a lot about what these guys were into. You know, I'm going to just go for it for as long as I can, have fun, and then when it's my time, it's my time.
So the voting system, I'm just curious. So you're voted in or voted out as captain. If you're voted out, are you walking the plank, or do you just join? Are you just back in the ranks?
One of the great parts about this exhibition is it dispels a lot of the myths about piracy. There was no walking the plank. There was actually no buried treasure because they didn't keep it long enough to bury it. They spent it on women and wine and gambling.
Yeah.
So that's one of the great parts about it, is you learn that. No, I don't know exactly what happened to a captain if he was voted out. Did he just join the rest of the crew and become?
Yeah, a lot of times that would happen, or the pirate or the captain could join another ship. And that happened quite often with Black Sam Bellamy, who was the captain of the Widow. And you can read all about this at the exhibit. He also was with Blackbeard at the time down in the Caribbean. So a lot of these guys were all intermingled. They knew each other, and so it was pretty easy to jump from one ship to another.
If a CEO gets voted out of a company, he starts another company.
Yeah, right. So. Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah.
If there was some grand plan that was hatched, would they work together? Would other crews work together?
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, Sam Bellamy had a couple other ships that sailed with him, correct?
Yeah, had a flotilla. Yeah, definitely.
They were their own little navy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, and we were sort of all brothers, for the same general purpose.
You're talking about walking the plank and saying, what are some of the other things that we all associate with pirates that just are not factual?
They weren't all 6'5", blue-eyed and blonde-haired. Was something I didn't know. I thought they were all Errol Flynn.
Yeah, no, they were young. By the time they'd get into their early 30s, they'd start losing all their teeth from all the rum and everything, and you can't really eat the food on a ship when you don't have any teeth. You have to survive on soup, and that didn't work out. So a lot of these guys were very young. They'd get diseases, or they would get hurt, injured, lost, and they just would never really make it into their late 20s or early 30s for the most part.
I also didn't know that pirates are actually not as brutal as we're led to believe.
No, I think for the most part, the pirates would chase these merchant ships, sometimes for days, and essentially once the pirate ship got close enough, they would raise a flag. Now, whether it was their own flag or just a black flag or sometimes a red flag, that signaled to the merchant ship, okay, we've caught up with you. Now, you can surrender and live, or you can fight and you'll all die.
And these guys, the merchant ships, weren't making enough money to fight for it.
Yeah, and
it wasn't their money.
Yeah, and it was insured. There was insurance, and that's one of the reasons why through these insurance companies back then, and from the depositions of captains that had been attacked by pirates, those documents, those original documents, the primary source documents, is where we get our information from.
So they were civil also. They would let the other crew live. Their word was good.
If they didn't put up a fight,
yep.
There was no reason to battle.
But every pirate captain was different. Of course, you had some bad guys that would just go in and hack and slash and just get what they want and then leave. But for the most part, they just wanted to take what they needed or what they could get off the ship and then see you later. We're moving on.
Or grab another ship.
Yeah.
And a crew, right? You could convert the other crew as well.
And a lot of the sailors from those merchant ships joined the pirates. It was a better life. There was less work, more rum, better pay.
Absolutely. We even have a story, you can read about it at the exhibit, of the youngest pirate that we've ever discovered. His name is John King, and he was 9 years old when he joined the pirates in the Caribbean. And he died in the wreck, but he was a 9-year-old boy on the ship.
I mean, we have the modern piracy that we're seeing off the Africa coast today, but this glory, the glory years,
it's called the golden age.
Right, the golden age of piracy. When did it begin to wane? What were the causes for it to
subside?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really kind of started to slough off around the 1720s. What happened was France and England sent out a decree that, okay, look, we get it with the pirates. Listen, if you give up your ships and you come in, you can keep what you have, just no more pirating. So you're off the hook. Come back home. You can keep what you have. Just burn your ships or leave your ships. So that sort of a lot of the pirates took advantage of that. And then there were the navies got bigger. The Coast Guard was doing more to protect the waterways. So that's sort of how it happened. The European governments just couldn't keep up with the pirates stealing, not only in the Caribbean, but also in the Indian Ocean, where they were taking the big, rich ships from the East India companies.
And now for getting your hands on the treasures and the ship, the Witta. Take me through that process. Obviously, you love diving.
Yeah.
and so when do you realize, I mean, you know the history of the ship, right? Why don't we start there? It's
1717 is when it sank as a pirate ship after it was captured from the slave traders. And it was making its way up the coast, supposedly to Cape Cod, where the captain, Black Sam Bellamy, was going to pick up his girlfriend. That's a whole other story.
Date night?
Yeah. And that's a great story, and we believe it's true. We have some of the documents to prove it. So it is a love story in there. They wrecked in a storm right off the beach on Cape Cod, where I'm from, right there, in 1717, April 26. There was 146 men on board, and only 2 survived. The rest were killed, drowned. Because the ship had so many cannon on board. The Witta, as a slave ship, was built to carry 22 cannon, and so far we've found close to 50 cannons, all loaded, ready to go. So as the ship wrecked on the sandbar right up against the beach, it went sideways and then it turned upside down. So everything crashed through the decks. The men were pinned underneath. It was a really violent storm. It's what we call in archaeology an exploded site. It's spread out over a great area, maybe a mile up and a mile back along the beach. And so when we work today, we're about 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet off the beach. We're in 15 feet of water, which is dangerous because we have a very big vessel that has to anchor over that. And then we have to dig down through between 15 and 25 feet of sand, because it's on a big sandbar to this day. So we have to remove all that sand to start looking for the artifacts. Start looking for things like these coins, or bigger objects like cannon concretions, big cannons all concreted together, little bits of gold dust, cufflinks, I mean, you name it. We've been doing it for 30 years. I've been doing it for 17, but for 30 years, and we've only gotten a fraction of what's on board, and that's close to 200,000 artifacts.
Was a cannon one of the first things you found? What was the...
Yeah, the way the ship was discovered was because of a map that was drawn at the time of the wreck in 1717. There was an actual treasure map that the explorer Barry Clifford found, and it says, X marks the spot, the Witta pirate wreck.
One of the survivors?
No, it was
Pirates would never make a treasure map. Yeah. They don't want anyone to know where the treasure is.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was actually hired by, the governor of Massachusetts
the governor
to find the ship and salvage it. Because it could be seen, the wreck could be seen for, up to years later, still off the coast.
Low tide, yeah.
But I believe, the 2 survivors, right? Aren't they put on trial? Isn't there?
Yeah. There was 2 survivors from the Witta, and then there was a smaller ship that was in their consort with 7 men on board. And that was a small ship that survived. It just went up on the beach. They were all captured and brought up to Boston, where they were tried. 2 of them were set free, but unfortunately one of them, that was a Native American to Cape Cod, was sold off as a slave. So only 1 guy survived, and the 7 were hanged in Boston, where the airport is today.
Which is also why they know so much about the ship. These guys testified in trial and told about all the ships they'd captured and how much silver and gold was on the ship.
And when you're in a situation like that, where you're going to be hanged, and maybe you could get away with, maybe you'd be able to get away if you told exactly what had happened and be honest, and so I have a feeling that what they were saying in their depositions was true to the point where they said, well, we only got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but in reality, one of the guys said, well, there's what would equal today to about 4.5 tons of silver on board, and we only have a fraction of that after 30 years.
And there's some of it here.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're
Yeah, this is just a sample of these are real. This is real pirate treasure. These are Spanish.
Do you want to touch it?
8 reals. Yeah, put some in your hand here. These are 8 reals. This is sterling silver, solid silver.
You guys enjoy this
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah, we'll,
That was last touched by real pirates, or actually Chris, but before that.
yeah, before that, yeah. That's right, yeah. And it's the only pirate treasure in the world. There's nobody else has discovered pirate treasure anywhere. So you're holding some very, very...
I'm no expert, but I do know enough. This looks as though it's Spanish.
That's right. It's got the Spanish cross with the lions and the houses on one side.
Yep.
And what's cool about this, it's to tell about the time, the times back then. So we know this was made in Lima, Peru, because of the L. It's an 8. There's an 8 real. There's the ocean there, the waves, and these 2 pillars, which are the represent the pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar. It says plus ultra, which means more beyond. So what Spain was saying with their coins was, through the Straits of Gibraltar, across the ocean, lies a new world which belongs to Spain. And that was on their money.
Now, is it all Spanish, or are you finding...
No, we have some English, British coins, Scottish, some French.
What was really cool about this ship is it attacked 50 other ships before
Yeah.
it sank.
And how do you know that? How do we know that?
There's records of it. There was the court depositions. There was the insurance claims. These ships all got robbed and said, "Hey, we had this much on board. We need to get repaid for this." So
all the captains of all the ships that survived, or any witness that survived being attacked by pirates, would have to give a deposition when they went back home or when they returned home. Why did you lose your ship? Where did all your stuff go?
So what's incredible is this ship was a time capsule of not just these pirate groups, but all the countries that were sailing in the Caribbean at the time are all represented on this ship.
And so the pirates, or the captain of the Witta, they're advertising the fact that, hey, we're the Witta, or I'm Sam Bellamy. We did this.
Well, he did build a reputation for himself.
Oh,
didn't
he did, yeah, absolutely. As a good man.
But the captains were actually building his reputation. Every captain he plundered would have to go back and explain himself. Where's the stuff you were carrying on your ship? Well, I was attacked by Sam Bellamy. He let me live, but he took my goods. So give my insurance money.
Yeah, and he took all our cannons.
He took all our cannons.
Yeah.
So all right. So obviously, I mean, this is the stuff of pirate tales right here. But what else have you found on board that's unique that you would say, well, how did that end up on a pirate ship?
Well, one of the things that we have is a pewter plate, dinner plate, and it's got a Freemason symbol in it, which is from 1717. That's pretty early. We also have a lot of the dinnerware, the galleyware, the spoons and things have people's initials on them, or we have a pewter plate with somebody carved a British flag on the back of it to sort of personalize these things. You don't find that every day. These are pirates, these are kids, young men that had these. This was theirs. This was their spoon. This was important to them. So that's very, very unique for what we find. And then there's things like the buckles and the buttons and just the smaller things that I think they really like to steal and like to wear. And then the gaming tokens are great.
Yeah.
We have these lead tokens with different markings on them for gambling and playing games and losing their money, which is how a lot of them lost their
They
fortunes.
couldn't gamble their real money on board because a fight would ensue.
Yeah.
So they made these little tokens that no one really cared too much if they lost their token at the time.
Right. They didn't want any fighting on board. But when they got to land, when they got to the Bahamas or Jamaica or, say Madagascar or wherever they were going, they'd go on land and then they'd lose their, they'd lose all their money and then they'd have to go back out again and get more. But that's what it was all about. It was just...
You'd mentioned the belt buckles and the buttons and that kind of thing. You start to paint a picture in your mind. The dress that we see in Hollywood, and you can do any of the cartoons that kids watch today. How accurate is that pirate garb? Is that what they wore? I mean, is it fairly accurate?
Well, there's a great show called Black Sails that we're involved with a little bit, and That's very, very accurate what they wear. Essentially, they were just wearing the clothes of the time or whatever they could steal, and they were dirty. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think they were they had to protect themselves from the sun, and they just wore what they wanted to. That, like I think I was talking about earlier, because of their social status back home in England, say they weren't allowed to wear nice silk coats or silk socks or lots of jewelry. They just weren't allowed to do that because of their place in society. So being a pirate, being out there and free, they would love wearing that stuff because it
They dressed very fancy, what we would consider fancy.
Yeah, only because they weren't allowed to do that back home. And when you
It was
tell
a form of
somebody,
protest even.
exactly, yeah. And when you tell somebody you can't do it, you try telling somebody that's a pirate. Now you can't drink that rum because you're not allowed. Well, the first thing they're going to do is say, well, I'm going to go ahead and drink this rum because I'm a free man.
Tell me about the dives and what the conditions are like. It sounds as though it's fairly shallow, but what are you dealing when you're out there?
Yeah.
I think I know where this may be. Is there a town nearby where the sandbar is located? Mm-hmm. Is it Chatham?
Chatham is close.
Okay.
Yeah, Chatham's is very close. We're in
I've
Wellfleet,
been there, and I
but-
remember there's a sandbar that's...
That's right. Yeah,
It's
I live
far
right
off.
there. Yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
all
Yeah,
right.
that's the
I've been
inlet.
there.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's the Chatham Inlet. Yeah. That's about say 15 miles south of the wreck site. Because it's the Atlantic Ocean, we have storms that come up all the time. We've been hit by a lot of storms. We were struck by lightning 2 years ago, which knocked everything out on our boat. That was because it's a big aluminum boat. It's a 72-foot aluminum research boat. We have 700-pound anchors all around us so that we don't move unless we want to with our anchoring system and GPS. But the current rips up and down there. So as a diver, it's the hardest shipwreck site I've ever had to work on. It's because of the currents. There's really no visibility. You're working, in these deep pits. And then the last few years, we've had great white sharks coming back and forth, right
As
through
if it wasn't dangerous enough.
Right.
Yeah, coming up sometimes the current is so strong that it can rip your face mask off.
You've had injuries diving too, haven't you?
Yeah, we all have. Yeah, broken ribs, broken fingers,
Very dangerous work.
cuts, Yeah, it's tough. It's not a lot of fun until sort of we're starting to find stuff and
Until
it's
you
a nice
find
day.
buried treasure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean sometimes we can go for days and not find anything, and then all of a sudden we hit an area where there's lots of artifacts, and that's when things kind of get hopping and everybody's really busy and chatty and.
So who owns the rights to this? Because if you're talking 400,000 pounds of silver...
4.5 tons of silver that's associated with this
Who
wreck.
owns it? Do these countries claim it? Do you
No.
say, hey, we found it, it's ours, we're the pirates of this?
This is the United States of America. You find something.
Yeah, it's finders keepers. In this case, Barry Clifford owns everything within his permit area, and nothing's ever been sold. It's all kept together.
So Barry, as a boy, heard stories of this shipwreck. It had become legend 300 years later, but he never forgot the story. Kept thinking about it. Came back from college. Said, I'm going to go look for the pirate ship, and he found it. But he had to go through a big process. He had to go through the Massachusetts government, I guess.
Yeah, the court systems. Yeah.
And get permission to dive the ship and to bring it up. And he owns the salvage rights, I guess.
Yep, that's right.
And the remarkable thing about him is he's never sold a piece of this. He understood the importance, the historical importance, so that people like in Grand Rapids could see these things firsthand. If he had sold it, it'd be scattered to the wind in private collections.
Tell me about the exhibit, when people arrive.
So what's great about this exhibit, they're probably drawn in by the story of pirates, the adventure of the golden age of piracy, but what they go away with is learning what really it was like to live in 1717, what the social climate was like. Slavery was the big economy of the place. People argue that piracy might not have existed without slavery because that's what made the area so rich. But what they get to see is they get to learn about the slavery, they get to learn about pirates, they get to climb aboard a replica of the ship, they get to touch pirate treasure, last touched by real pirates 300 years ago.
Is there a metal detector on the way out?
Well, it's
There will be here. If you keep buying these coins,
I
see
promise
that,
you it's
so-
secure, but
Yeah.
yes, they get to touch it.
Yeah.
We thought that was a very important part, that people get to touch history.
How is it presented? Is it in a big chest? Or
The main treasure is behind glass in a chest, but there are a handful of pieces that are secured into a plexiglass case that you can just rub the top of it.
So this is great for families.
Absolutely.
Parents get the history, and
Yeah.
kids.
And what's great is that parents they get to be engaged with their children, and they learn more than they think they're going to learn. It's not sword fighting, and it's all sorts of things to learn.
I think everybody that comes out of there is going to definitely learn something new, going to come out with something that they didn't know before, that they're going to say, wow. I always get that from people when I see them coming out of the exhibit. I had no idea that was like that, or I had no idea that a cannon was this big, and I'm right in front of a real pirate's cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Chris McCourt, conservator and diver with a project, and Jason Simmons, artifact expert with Real Pirates. Thank you both so much. Before we go, the exhibit runs.
It opens on Saturday, October 18th, and runs through April 19th, but I'd suggest getting tickets early because it will start to sell out.
Fantastic. Both of you, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.